Hey there, you beautiful souls. Welcome to the Authentic You podcast, where we dive deep into the power of authenticity and the journey to rediscovering your true self. I'm your host, Kristina Holle, and I'm beyond excited to embark on this transformative journey with you. Ever wonder how authenticity impacts relationship, career choices, and overall well-being? Well, wonder no more, because the Authentic You is your compass on this incredible adventure. So what can you expect from our show? Well, picture this: heart-to-heart conversation, inspiring stories, expert insights on the importance of authenticity. We're going to tackle the masks we wear, the societal expectations we navigate, and guide you back to the essence of who you truly are. The Authentic You podcast, where real stories meet real talk. Get ready to shine your light and live authentically. I'm your host, Kristina Holle. I'm a former corporate junkie turned into a transformational coach, an author, speaker, and the founder of the Authentic You Coaching. I have over 25 plus years senior HR leadership experience, but I left it all behind to help individuals like you to reconnect with their authentic selves, to overcome fear, and design a life and career that they truly love. Today, we're diving into the topic that might hit a little close to home: control. So let me ask you a bold question. Are you a control freak? Be honest with yourself. Midlife has always brought out this inner control freak, doesn't it? Because we have so much behind us, so much that we've earned, so many things that we've done that we're holding on to, and still we have so much in front of us that we tend to cling to just to stay afloat. So I want us to pause. Is control really working for you, or is it working against you? Is it causing you to keep being stuck in the same spot over and over again? I can speak to this because I truly understand. Before I started to do this integration work, I was really a control freak in how I managed things, control freak in work, with my family, and I didn't even realize it. It was completely a blind spot. It's stuff where you have marching orders, and if things don't go to plan, it really can set you in a whirlwind. And when we're holding on so tight, it may not be working in our favor. Control may feel like it's really safe, especially now. If you're in this stage, you have everything in control, everything's in perfect little boxes, all compartmentalized, and you've built a career, a family, everything that you envisioned, everything that you were told that you were supposed to be. And it's very natural to want to protect it, to hold it in very close. This is that idea of attachment. So we're very attached to these things. And there's this narrative that's in our head that if we don't control it, then who's going to do it? And that means that I'm going to lose everything. But I find midlife in particular is an interesting one, midlife and older, because the things that were working for you, maybe when your kids were younger, when you were starting out and everyone was listening, it was easier to control things. I know I experienced this directly with my children. As they got older, they would challenge a little more. They weren't listening to my demands or the way that things were supposed to be. And it would cause me a lot of angst. It would cause me a lot of frustration because they were actually on their journey to find independence. But if we are holding on, or in my case, if I'm holding on so tight, they can't get there. They can't get there because I'm kind of suffocating them with control. My nickname back in the day was the General. You can ask my dad. My dad would call me the General. That's how I would get things done. It protected me. I was really good at that level of discipline. And I do think that we still need discipline in our life, but when it's on overdrive, we could be really putting ourselves in a place of angst or situations that might not be really helping us excel the way that we want to excel. Perhaps it isn't your career, or maybe perhaps your career isn't as fulfilling as it once was. And I think that that's what happened with myself when I transitioned from my entire corporate career and shifted into this new space. I had to let go a little bit. But I was really feeling, I was trying really hard. And the reason why I'm talking about this today, because I was inspired with some of my journaling this morning. I was really at a point where I was trying to force it. I felt the pressure to keep making it work. And what all that did was add more control, more control, more control, which in essence will lead you to burnout, will lead you to a life that's not fulfilled. And when we understand that, then we can let it go. Then we can be in flow and we can see where the path is actually supposed to take us. But if we're holding on so tight, we're not allowing these realizations or that inner voice to start to surface. We get very stuck. We put ourselves in stuck energy. And I've also witnessed it with some of my clients and others. Like, you can be over controlling in your relationships, over controlling in health, over controlling in many aspects, how the future is supposed to be, over controlling how you're supposed to show up in your career. And when you understand that you're on this uphill battle and it's self-sabotage, you're actually doing it to yourself, it can seem really exhausting and isolating. So yes, control can be a good thing within reason, but it's often a coping mechanism when we're not feeling relevant, secure, or that we have purpose. So we're trying to hold on to things because they make us feel as though that we are safe in that moment, that everything is going to work out in that moment. So we're going to hold on really, really tight. But when we hold on really, really tight, we reduce the likelihood of new things to come in. And you could be holding on to stuff that really isn't for you when you think about it. And that to me is disheartening. It's frustrating. And I'm coming to you because I really am seeing the transition. I know some of you were listening earlier this week, and I was talking about those conversations with ourselves. And I had audio recordings of journaling moments. I was very fortunate. But the level of control that I'm really trying to control how everything's going to work out is stifling. I listen to myself and it's like 5 years back and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like it's overbearing for myself. If I could provide the wisdom that I have now to that part of me before and say, it's okay, because what is yours is yours. It will unfold as it needs to. But when we're holding on so tight, we may be missing opportunities and we might be holding on to stuff that is not serving us well. So I put this out to you, the group. I want you to think about it. What is working for you? Is it working to hold on so tight? Okay, so let me put it into perspective. I've been sharing a little bit of my stories and stuff, but here are signs that you may be a control freak. And I mean control freak. I put a heart beside it because it's control freak with love. This is about an awareness. What we do is bring things to awareness so we can maybe adjust a few things and try to pivot. Because if we're holding on so tight, you're not going to hit your full potential. You're going to actually lock yourself in to an old way of being. And the reality is we are meant to transform. We're meant to grow. We've talked about this before. The idea of a butterfly starts out as a caterpillar, but the caterpillar is transforming. It's meant. We are the same. But if the caterpillar is refusing to go through the process, then they're stifling the beautiful potential of being a butterfly. And I would say we could apply that to us completely. So here, tell me if this resonates for any of you. These are signs that you might be a struggling control freak. Okay. You resist asking for help because it feels like you're losing control. This one for me is huge. This is a big eye opener. This was me my entire life. Because I felt as though I couldn't count on other people, I would constantly be putting more stuff on myself. And it can apply in workplaces, it can apply in home, it can apply in many different places. There's numerous times I'm talking to clients about the idea of delegating, about handing off, about helping other people help you. If you're holding on to it so tight and you feel like you're the only one who can do anything and you're not asking for help, that is where it's not serving you well. How about this one? If you're looking for the perfect outcome. So I have heard this many times with people that I've worked with. Well, I don't want to hand it off because I can just do it better. And I continue the conversation. When we start speaking like that, you are one, self-sabotaging, putting more on your plate, and you're not allowing the other people around you to learn. So I'm talking to the moms out there for your kids. I'm talking to the executives out there who have people on their team. We have to learn to let it go, even if it's not going to be perfect. It at least allows people to learn and it allows you some space to release control. It's not control piece. If you can release it a little bit, you'd be very surprised what may come in. You start developing people, you start helping your family grow, you help others get to where they need to be, so you are not enabling or jumping in to fix everything. People have to have the space to be able to learn. And when we understand that, then it becomes this beautiful thing. Then you have room to continue to learn. And you're not living in the old paradigm. You start to shift out. You start to push your comfort zone. You get out of it a little bit. So I think that that is extremely powerful. What about this one? You feel anxious if people aren't following your plans or your advice. This has happened to me. So any of these ones that I'm sharing with you, I've seen it happen with my clients where I have to help them unpack it. So there's no judgment here. I have had every single one of these. So play it out. What if they don't follow your plans? What if they don't follow your advice? Then what? Is it fearful that you're going to have to pick up all the pieces? Is it fearful that they're going to get hurt? Is it fearful that you don't feel respected, that people are not aligned with what you have to say? Is this a you thing? What are we holding on to? So I just want you to think about that today. I've done major transformation work in organizations, shutting down buildings, bringing people along, building new buildings, tons of transformation work. And people are not loving change. I do. I love change because I understand that it's inevitable. It's a part of the flow of life. We're supposed to be evolving. We're supposed to be changing. And this has come with experience and working through my own control freak stuff. So I can slowly let things go so it can open up new space. But change is inevitable, whether or not we like it or not. Things will change. So you can have it where you're resisting it. And the way I feel it, it's like contracted energy. You're just holding it tight. You're holding it tight because you don't want it to change. And to me, it sounds very fearful energy. You're stuck in this fearful place. Like, oh, I don't want to change. I don't want to lose anything. I want to keep it the same. And if I do, then this isn't going to serve me well. So when we understand that, then we can start asking ourselves the question, is this serving me? Am I operating from fear or am I operating from love? When we move into new space. So I'll use the example of my kids. When I was younger, when we were all younger, but when they were younger, they would listen to me no problem. And I know I said this before, but this is actually a very important piece because this is when I started to realize that something was missing with me. One is the fulfillment piece, but the control piece, it would set me off completely if they were not listening to what I had to say. Mind you, it was two sides of the coin, wasn't it? Because here I'm trying to teach them to be independent and be able to stand on their own and have a voice. But I was okay with it until they had a voice against me. That's not really fair. So it caused me to go inwards and start doing the inner reflection. What is this control about? And it came down to fear that they may not need me, fear that what I had to say wasn't important, fear that they weren't actually connecting with me anymore, or that I couldn't keep them safe. But the reality is, it's inevitable. They're going to grow. So I'm either going to be a part of that journey with them, or I'm not. And this is where I think there's a lot of friction that happens when people are trying to control everything. We need control, don't get me wrong, but it's when it gets excessive and it's starting to put you in positions where it doesn't feel right anymore. You're getting angry, you're getting frustrated, you're getting anxious. We need to address that. So when we bring these things up, or I bring these things up, it's really about, trust me, you're not alone. I have many clients that are dealing through these things. But we haven't really talked about control. Control is actually honored in our society because it's a nice little tight box and everything fits perfectly, and you're following suit and you're following the expectation of the external world of how you're supposed to show up and do things. So when things, can you imagine the angst that might be happening when things are feeling as though you can't control them anymore? As the reality is, I'm here to tell you, you're not meant to control them. People are meant to evolve. Relationships are meant to evolve. You either grow together or you grow apart, and that's okay. But when we start to understand the evolution and we accept it, it's a much more entertaining and fun experience rather than feeling as though I'm losing. So it's really interesting to understand that this evolution of change, it's inevitable. The only constant in life is change. I used to say that when I was younger. I didn't even really understand the depth of where that would go. But it's so true. I think it's interesting because sometimes we get caught up in this. We want the control so much because we don't want to fall short, and we have the anticipation of what the future holds. And sometimes that can feel really overwhelming. So we just tighten our grip more. And we think that's going to help us manage through it. But sometimes the more we resist, the more it could create friction, where there should be flow, where you could be building bridges, you could be meeting new people, you could be doing new things. But if you're attached to things and controlling, then it's almost like I literally see like a pitchfork hitting the ground, like you are standing your ground that you don't want more. You're not allowing it to flow. And I know it can be really hard because we have been taught to achieve and build things and material things, and that means success. That means you're doing well. You have your 2.5 kids. You did everything you were supposed to do. But that pressure is not the only way to do it. And it's not necessarily realistic, because once you get there, once you get that accomplishment, whatever that is, based on other people, now what? So then you're constantly, oh, what should I do now? Or this is the fear for the future. What should I do now? Or you're holding on like, I have a house and I did all this. I got to hold on to it tight. But if there is an evolution, and when you start to shift and move, so let's use a house, for example. I love this example. It's really interesting because when we have a house, so our whole life, finally, if you get to own a house, I think that's fantastic. I'm happy for you, but it's not the be all end all. But we've been told, if you have a house, that means that you've made it. But what if you're holding on to this house and there's a burden around the house? And there's a way that, oh gosh, I've got to keep the house. I've got to pay taxes on it. I've got to make sure the upkeep is a certain way. So let's say you're holding on to it instead of being open to flow. So if we were open and letting go of the control and saying, okay, let's see what comes through. Perhaps you could downsize. Perhaps you could move to an area that you love instead of holding on to something that is not serving you anymore. Perhaps you could travel the world and see things if you sold your house. But do you see what I'm saying about the shifting? The shifting is really important to be able to let go of the control a little bit. Because when you do that, new possibilities surface. So the house example is really a good one for me because you may want to downsize, and that's okay. You might say to someone in your family, I love family, love them, but sometimes they can be a little judgmental about some of your choices, but let's put it out there. You may go up to them and say, hey, great idea. I am feeling as though this house is such a burden right now. I would love to downsize. I would love to go to Spain, go to Europe, maybe have two smaller little places, or maybe just have a condo and then travel the world. They may be like, what are you doing? Why would you want to do that? It's not responsible. You're taking your home and you're changing that up. I want you to think about this a little bit because it's really about the idea, what is it worth to you, the quality of life? Is this control of holding on to things that are not serving you really working for you? Are you doing it for other people? And I think that is a part of it. When we understand that, we can start to reframe things. So we're going to talk about that in a minute, but I'm going to bring up Stephanie Webb up for a little bit of an insight on this. Stephanie's another coach on this platform, if you guys don't know. So come on up, Stephanie. What are your thoughts?
Hi, Kristina.
Hey, how are you?
What a wonderful talk.
Yeah.
But it reminded me of something. I've started going through things and taking them to the mission store or the Goodwill, selling certain things on Facebook Marketplace because I don't need it. I'm surrounded by stuff. I used to have a shopping addiction. And I used to just get stuff all the time. I love dollar store, Michael's, Winners, everything. And because it felt good in the moment. And then a few hours later, it didn't. But I just realized I have so much stuff. And I love purses, but I have so many purses. And I don't even use them that much. Now I like practical purses, whereas I used to get all the pretty ones. And it's freeing. It's so freeing to just let it go because I don't need it. I'm like, that's okay. Somebody else, this could bring somebody else joy. And my dad made it. Sorry.
No, I just want to ask you, sorry, so what do you think the buying was about? Was that a control thing?
Well, okay. So I think I switched. Well, I didn't really switch. I started binge eating when I was 4.
Right.
And I was always told I was fat. So, although I look at myself, I wasn't fat as a kid.
You're a beauty. If you guys see Steph, she's a beauty. Yes. Anyways, go ahead.
And then I lost weight due to some diet cleanse thingies in 2008. And I slimmed down to a size 8. And I went shopping and it felt good to buy clothes. And I just felt pretty and like, oh, I can actually wear clothes and be, and then I started really just enjoying that feeling. I don't know if it was control. I just know it made me feel better in the moments.
It sounds controlly in a good way. Because it was making you feel good, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And I also hated my life. So I was just like Martin John uses the word pacifying, which I think is really great.
Yes.
Pacifying myself. to make me feel better in the moment.
Right.
And
And
then I
you
moved to
buying,
Toronto,
yeah. Oh, I
and
didn't know that.
shopping was a way to get away from my roommates, but also it was just fun because there's so many cool stores in Toronto, right?
Absolutely. And I would say like you can control shopping. So you could go out, you could purchase, you could do all that stuff. So that action in itself was you controlling and pacifying.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes. Yes.
So yeah,
Just like
anyways,
with
no,
the
it's
food,
fast.
it
Yeah,
was
I
my way
think
of
it's really good.
controlling.
I think it's good for people to hear that stuff. It's just
Mhm.
like for them to understand. So anyways, continue. Sorry.
And especially when, like, I never felt I had a voice growing up and food was the only thing I could control. So all of those things, like, this is the thing I can control. Yeah. And then also just learning about, when you to make room for new, you need to let go of things from your past, things that are not serving you anymore, and that you don't find joy. Like, what was it? What's that woman on who had a Netflix show, Marie Kudo or something? Kondo.
Okay.
She would talk about if you see a thing and it brings you joy, keep it. If it doesn't, you can get rid of it. And I thought, I start to look at that and I'm like, do I get excited about this dress? Yes. I'm going to keep it. Do I like wear? Oh, no. Then why do I have it still? Anyway, so my dad saw me get rid of stuff and he goes, "What? Don't you like this anymore? Wow, what's wrong with it?" I'm like, "Nothing. It's perfectly fine. It's not that I don't like it, but I don't need it. I don't need it to have to make myself happy anymore." And, and then there's that judgment that you feel, but it's also, I know what my dad holds on to, and he lives in clutter. He just
I
has so
think,
many things he can't let go of.
well, I think that there's a generational thing too, because my dad is the same way. They
Mhm.
were byproducts of the war, right?
Mm.
So, they were war kids, basically. My grandparents were in the war. But that generation, there was a piece where they were really keeping everything, and how could they be resourceful and repurpose? And they never learned to let go. I'm interested in your thoughts on that, because I do see a pattern with that hoarding mentality. Might not go full extreme, but my dad definitely would be picking up stuff, just in case stuff, all the time.
Yeah, and then also they were adults in the 80s when it was kind of keeping up with the next door
Oh
neighbor
yeah,
and
good point.
right? And it was all about collecting things. Yeah, there's so many different aspects to it. And my dad is like, he's got over 8,000 books.
Wow.
And he has a heart. He's like, if you asking me to get rid of my books is like asking me to cut off my arm. And
Interesting.
I have a feeling like he doesn't talk emotions. It's really hard to get a real answer out of him, but
Right.
I like to observe and what I've learned about behavior and stuff. I'm like, oh, I think it's also he loves feeling smart. Like he loves when people come and they're like, "Oh wow." He loves that. It brings him a sense of pride. And he wants to be seen as smart to others. And so I think that's also a part of it. But it's hard to know because he doesn't talk about it.
Yeah, but I think it's amazing. Like, and you don't. So let's go back to what people love, right? To me, it's different for everyone. So maybe the
Mhm.
books could also have been an escape for him. It's a sign of being educated. It's something that I think it's really important. Sometimes we are keeping things because they think that they're a part of our identity, but that may not be the case. But people have to do the work in order to understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting, because whatever people choose, like when I'm thinking about some of this control stuff, if you don't realize that you are a bit of a control freak, that you've picked up these habits, then you're going to continue. That's why the conversation is so important. It's really to help bring it to awareness of where you may have been, or maybe you've witnessed it with other people, be controlling, and what that's about.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's fascinating, isn't it? When you
it
start
really
to
is.
think and to bring it out of the, because I got a lot of shame. And I know we shamed my dad. We were always like, Dad, you got to get rid of your books. And
Hmm.
he would just get so angry. And then we'd get angry. And understanding it a lot better now, it's like, wow, there's so much within that.
Oh yeah,
Like, there's
yeah.
so much shame that people try to assign to you. And a lot of
Hmm.
times we take it on.
Hmm.
I know I did for many years. And just understanding, like, it's not about shame, but it's about how can I work towards being able to to not need this, to being able to be free.
Yeah, the toxic shame is like, it's absolutely brutal. Like when you really start going on this journey and you see how much people have been holding on to secretly, like we've all been suffering silently about this shame, but no one was talking about it because we're all hiding out. We're so shameful. We're all hiding all our stuff. But that's why these conversations are really powerful, because as we start to shift and identify around the shame, then we start modeling different behaviors. Like even your dad seeing you throw stuff away will probably, that's interesting. Just it's a little nugget, and maybe
Yeah.
that could take life.
Yeah. And it's also releasing the energy. And
Hmm.
so when he sees me just start to, yeah, no big deal, that's fine. He might outwardly say something, but like you're saying, it might remind him of something. Like seeing that in other people might make you start to wonder, when you see other people being happy, to just do
Yeah.
something like that, it makes you start
Oh,
questioning, maybe that I would feel
well,
better.
it's yeah, it's honestly, it's completely magical when you start seeing it. So here's the trick. When you see other people happy, it's being able to be like, "Hey, I want that. I can be happy too." That is very different than, "Oh, that person's only happy. That doesn't happen for me."
Mm,
That is a part of these awareness tricks to understand it does. It happens for everybody. I just really want to talk about the idea when we lose a little bit of this control, it allows us to show up in a way that is so powerful because you're not fearful and you're actually gaining more power because you're claiming that you're good either way how things start to unfold. So I would ask, are you trying to control people, places, things in your life? And if you do, is it serving you? So when we are in this place where we're holding on really tight, we may want to consider reframing it, reframing the control, looking at things that are outside of your focus and letting it go. So many times when I'm working with people, they will get so caught up in what their other people are doing in their life, how it's impacting them. And we have to refocus, control what you can control. So it's controlling how you react to situations, react to certain priorities, react to certain narratives. So it's really, are you going to sit back and really enjoy life? Or are you going to be so controlled? Think about if you've ever seen people. It's funny because I've seen it in my family that there's certain cultures that they don't want to be overly emotional. They want to be reserved and in control. So is that serving you or is that not? And how they react to surprises, or if they're shocked, they just go inwards and they don't show anything. So there's good stuff to that, and then other times it may not be serving us very well. So I really want you to understand that control is usually about fear. So I would ask you right now to reflect, what are you afraid that will happen if you lose control? What's the worst case scenario if you let go of it? And you could say something, well, Kristina, I could lose my house. I could lose my friendships. And we're talking about you might be holding on to these things that they're not your things to hold on to. This is about you creating a life that is actually going to be fulfilled and exciting for you. So I would also pose the other question, like, what are you trying to protect by trying to always be in control? This was mine. I was always holding on so tight so everything could be perfect. And it was almost stifling in that space of protection. This is when protection is not really serving you well, it actually is backfiring. I would ask you to also reflect on what opportunities are you missing out on if you're in that controlled state. Is there connections? Is there joy? Is there, you're too focused on managing everything? Are you too focused on you being the point of contact to do everything? And if that's the case, then that could be a bit of a struggle. I want you to think of how can you let go a little bit. So Stephanie came up and she talked about the releasing of being a shopaholic. But to me, a shopaholic, an emotional eater, a workaholic, these are all forms of control. They're restrictive. You're doing that. Those are the behaviors that we do. But some of us didn't even know. I was a workaholic, not even being aware that you're so focused in because you've created this little empire that feels safe and you keep building and you keep doing it. But you could get so stuck in that space that you're not allowing other opportunities to come through, and it may not serve you well. And we've talked about that because when we think about holding on so tight, so let's say you're a workaholic and you're like, okay, I've got to do X, Y, and Z. I've got to look really good. My whole identity is behind being a workaholic. I don't know if you've heard this. It's so funny. I hear it differently now than I did 5 years ago. But when I hear people say, I'm so busy, I can't take on anything else, this is going on. To me, in the past, I would be like, oh, wow, she must be really important. But now it's very different. Now I'm like, okay, you're holding on to things that you're not supposed to hold on to. And two, what is this really about? Because if we are in the power of letting go, we should be in flow, we should be in a good place, but we shouldn't be in overwhelm. That when we're in overwhelm, we've held on to too much. And I go to the last ones that I was talking about. Is it because you're overthinking things? Are you holding on to things for too long? Are you worried about perfectionism? Are you worried that other people can't do the job, so you take everything on? Well, we need to talk about this because until you start to reframe and start to let go of some of this stuff, then you are self-sabotaging and you are on a path to burnout. And I want everyone to feel great about everything that's going on in their life. This is really a beautiful stage that you're in your life right now. In this moment, you can start making decisions to shift and try new things. And if you are extreme in one particular area, perhaps it's time to look through the control lens and say, am I being excessive and I'm trying to control here? What am I scared of? What am I doing in this situation to try and get me to just be so focused here? Life is supposed to be pretty colorful and it's supposed to have multiple pieces. It's not only supposed to be very focused in on one, there should be multiple pieces. So when we say work-life balance, which gets played quite a bit in business, it's really being able to blend your home life with work. But it's hard sometimes if you get so focused. If you are in a space where you have no balance, that is a red flag for me. That is where we would be talking about how can we reset this? And sometimes people have a lot of resistance around it. They're like, well, I can't. I have to do everything. This is the way it is. But I challenge you a little bit to go a little deeper to know that you can actually unpack it. You can sit back and you would be surprised how much you might be taking on that is not yours to take on. That's why it could be a control issue where you're holding on to things that are not yours. This is really about living a freer life. The next chapters of your life, I would strongly suggest that you loosen the reins. Your power is not in controlling everything around you, but it's trusting yourself to navigate the ride. And it's a fun ride. But if you are so focused in, it reminds me of a horse. You know how horses have the blinders and they're really focused in, just doing one thing. And I think it's great to do that if you have one goal that you want to get. But if it's overtaking everything, then you're missing out on some really great opportunity in your life to do some different things. So it's learning to trust yourself. And that was a part of the integration work and really understanding who I was, is that I don't need to control things that way. Actually, for example, I'll go back to my kids. It's beautiful to see them flourish. I don't need to control that. They're actually learning skills to cope and develop, and life skills to be who they're supposed to be. And that can apply to business, or that could apply to friendships. Sometimes people need space in order to do what they're supposed to do. So today's topic is like, really, are you a control freak? Well, the answer is yes. I think we've all been raised to be control freaks. But like, don't worry, you're not alone. Today, I invite you to just consider there's another way. That sometimes when we're holding on so tight to things that aren't really meant to be managed, we're meant to live, and we need to let things go, watch them evolve, and take time, like see how they're going to shift into a beautiful place where you have freedom. Because if you're operating in the constraint, you won't have freedom. You might have a lot of things, but I would ask you, are you really joyful in your life? Or are you stressful because you feel as though more is coming at you all the time? And you're like, oh, I'll just take it on. I'll just take it on. And then next year, you're not happy. You're not loving your life. I promise you. So ask yourself today, people, places, things. What are you controlling these days?
Don't forget to follow us on social media for updates and behind the scene contents. And if you have any suggestions about future topics or guests, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, remember, stay curious, keep learning, and never stop exploring the fascinating world around you. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.